FNaF is a series beloved by many for its scary fun gameplay and deep lore, but with Help Wanted 2 just released, we have to ask, which game in the series is the best? I'm Kyle with One Up Binge, and this is every Five Nights at Freddy's mainline game ranked worst to best. We'll be covering all 11 mainline games, and yes, 11, as we're separating Security Breach and Ruin as two separate entries, since Ruin is considered a standalone DLC, and we won't be including FNaF World or FNaF AR. Starting at the very bottom, we have the game that people either love or hate, Five Nights at Freddy's 3. FNaF got mixed reviews at launch, with it being perhaps the most divisive game in the series. Having come out amidst a sea of fan games, and so shortly after the previous games in the series, made critics kind of tired of the formula. The game only features one real antagonist, Springtrap, who is iconic and a lot of people's favorite for good reason, as he's scary and very difficult to deal with. However, when the game jump scares you at every opportunity, those scares go from something that shows you how you failed or messed up, to something that becomes boring within an hour of gameplay. The jump scares are also just lackluster from an animation perspective, especially Springtrap himself. Many say it doesn't last very long, and others have even criticized it for being tense and stressful at the expense of just being fun. Though to FNaF's credit, there are a lot of additions to the lore, and it introduces us to William Afton, as well as how he became Springtrap, and introduces us to the revenge of his victims. So the lore is probably the strongest point. Another very divisive entry is Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location. Sister Location was the first game that came out post FNaF World and needed to be a game changer for the series. And when it came out, many people considered it to be one. This game was Scott's first foray into a story-heavy game and introduced pseudo-free roam into the more rigid night structure. However, while the story is strong in this one, critics have said that it has a poorly outlined story, its gameplay is not as engaging, and it lacks a lot of tension.
There is something bad inside of me.
In fact, most criticisms of the game call it far too linear, and that it has next to no replayability, where the nights are the exact same, and even with the alternate ending, the game is far too short. It just doesn't feel like FNaF. Once again, the lore is really what saves this game. Sister Location is fun the first time, but once you've played through it once, there isn't really a reason to boot it up again. That said, with perhaps the exact opposite problem, up next we have Ultimate Custom Night. We have to rank it here due to its large roster, intense gameplay, and unique way of handling animatronics. However, the thing about this game is that while there are plenty of combinations and ways to play, once you've played a couple of runs, the game definitely gets a bit stale, and there's really not much in terms of lore to keep you captivated. The only interesting thing is the occasional animated cutscene, and while these are fun to watch, you need to beat one of the hardest challenges in the game to get our first real lore cutscene. In fact, the problem with UCM is that it feels a bit aimless, though a lot of people do love it. As we move into our next spot, we have to talk about one of the more recent games in the series, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Security Breach was the first big aim game in the series, and it's another one with a lot of mixed reviews, and for some seemingly good reasons. Security Breach's most prominent complaint will always be that upon release, it was filled to the brim with bugs and glitches that sometimes made it unplayable. For instance, critics from PC Games said the game could be so much better with more development time, and most people would have to agree. That said, from the perspective of big fans of the series, the game is really strong due to its unique spin on gameplay, new designs, and overall story, as buggy as it is. It's a great new take on the series for fans, and while some complain it didn't have much in terms of scares, others likened it to a great survival horror experience, and that it expands its ideas into a 3D space really well. While the bugs and glitches leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, with most of those things being fixed, we decided to rank it a bit higher with all things considered. Let's move on to another weird step in the series' direction and talk about Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Many of the gripes people have for this title are similar to the ones for FNaF 3. While the lore aspects are immaculate and it works as a perfect finale to the series when it came out due to Henry's iconic speech.
I couldn't save you then, so let me me save you now.
The problem comes from the gameplay, in both the Tycoon segments and the more important survival segments. All of the animatronics work the exact same way in the survival segments, and it's mostly just waiting on bars to fill so you can end the night. The Tycoon segments were definitely fun, but to quote CD Action, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator looks like two different games that are stitched together, though we do understand why the game is popular amongst the fanbase. Next up is Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin. Ruin is a standalone DLC that adds on to Security Breach. It took everything people liked about Security Breach and expanded upon it, while also taking out most of the bugs and issues that plagued the game from the beginning. Taking out these bugs and issues left it with a much better critical score. In fact, the game received a lot of praise due to its story and positive changes. In the fandom, there are a lot of people who really love this game, but unfortunately, it'll always be dragged down by being a bit too little too late for a game that sort of bombed when it first released, which is kind of sad to think about. But jumping back to the numbered games, we have perhaps the lowest rated game from the critics, Five Nights at Freddy's 4. This is kind of surprising because it's one of the games with the highest praise from the fanbase. FNaF 4 is one of the hardest games in the series, and for good reason. Having to deal with almost exclusively audio clues would make anyone shudder. Listening for breathing and footsteps feels like a survival horror in the greatest way possible. For a game that was considered one of the best in the series by its fans, some critical reviews said that there wasn't really much about this fourth game that needed a return. That said, it has unique character designs, intriguing gameplay, and its new reliance on sound was a great way to take the series. Not to mention the fact that its lore and storytelling through the minigames made it one of the most fun to play in the series. Ranking just outside of our top 3 is the most recent game, the newly released Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2. The fanbase has already shown a lot of praise for this game. With lots of new scares, intense moments, and plenty of new gameplay segments, it's no surprise that we decided to rank it so high on our list.
You are my superstar.
Every mission can be replayed many times because of the new objectives and unique twists that really keep things fresh. The animatronics, both new and old, look immaculate, and the scares are actually really good. Phaser Blast is a blast to play, pun intended. Food Prep is stressful in all the right ways, and the staff-only mode gives you all the terror you could ask for. Also, the hard mode levels look great, and the aesthetics of the whole game as a whole hit in all the right places. It even seems to have managed to release with better performance and controls than the previous game. If more content is to come out for this game, it could easily rise into the top 3 on our list. But now we get to the game that started it all. Taking the bronze medal for best FNaF game is the original Five Nights at Freddy's. When the game came out in 2014, it became a sensation for good reason. It burst onto the scene as a perfect game for people to play and watch, and formed a loving fandom. It was something new and original that shocked people with its take on survival horror, and exploring something we hadn't seen before, animatronics. Its gameplay was simple and easy to pick up, where anyone could play the game. It was praised for its original ideas and its new take on terror, as well as the fact that it lacked gore but still got the horror point across. The reason we don't rank it in the top spots is that while the gameplay is fun and iconic, it's still very simple compared to other games that would come later, and there were only 4 real animatronics to deal with. But the original FNaF laid the groundwork for the series as a whole. Taking the silver medal for best FNaF game is Scott Cawthon's sequel, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. FNaF 2 is another game that has to be ranked towards the top because of how beloved it is by fans, and it isn't terribly disliked by critics, like some of the later entries in the series. FNaF 2 is a strong entry because of its amazing animatronic designs, really cool aesthetics, and the gameplay that improves upon the previous in immaculate ways. Its designs and setting are some of the best in the series, with its brighter but still scary location, amazing ambiance, and really cool animatronics. While many of these animatronics may seem the same, the difficulty and unique mechanics are varied enough to be interesting no matter what night you're playing on. It's definitely a sequel that takes what's great about the original and builds off of it in ways that really work out. Earning the gold medal for best FNaF game is Five Nights at Freddy's VR Help Wanted. Help Wanted is considered by far the best in the series by many, and for good reason. It combines everything that worked from the original games and removed the things that didn't, and topped it all off with VR. This has been something people were asking for since the very beginning, including the king himself, Markiplier. It's safe to say that this game did just that, as it's one of, if not the, highest rated game in the series by critics. Some complain about rehashing the older games just to capitalize on nostalgia, and while this is a complaint we kind of understand, we think it doesn't compare to the amount of new stuff, from the new ideas to lore implications a mile long. We have to say that the game is great to play, and the only overarching complaint is the controls, which have since been patched to be much better. Help Wanted hits every box we wanted to see in a Five Nights at Freddy's game for the longest time, and that makes it one of the best experiences on this list. No matter how you feel about the series as a whole, it's no surprise this game takes everything iconic about the original games and makes them so much better, making it more than worthy of the gold medal for best FNaF game.